We will now examine the extensive fabrications and deceptions promoted by NASA and other space agencies that have constructed a completely fictitious narrative and framework of cosmology and the Earth. The first moon landing event occurred on July 20th, 1969, when NASA's Apollo 11 mission allegedly landed astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the lunar surface, while Michael Collins orbited above in the command module. The official story states that Neil Armstrong became the first human to step onto the moon, followed by Buzz Aldrin. Let us first explore the significant events and key figures that contributed to the inaugural moon landing and subsequent developments. We will then address many concerns regarding the authenticity of this historical event. This will sharpen our discernment and help expose this elaborate psyop that, as of recording this, diverts into itself an astonishing $72 million per day in taxpayer funding. Soon after their historic mission, all 3 astronauts of Apollo 11 resigned. The image from their first television press conference below captures their somber expressions and reflects the overall atmosphere of this mysterious interview. A stark contrast to the jubilation one would surely expect based on one of mankind's greatest achievements in history. The astronauts' reluctant replies and uneasy behavior, coupled with an atmosphere that many perceive as incredulous, render the interview quite a mystery, resembling a calamity rather than a celebration of 3 men brimming with pride and enthusiasm. James Webb, NASA's top official, unexpectedly resigned just days before the first Apollo mission launched. This departure was unexplained, and came at a time when he was on the verge of witnessing what would have been the pinnacle of his professional career. An interesting photograph from 1965 shows NASA's George Mueller, on the right, visiting the MGM studio, where film producer Stanley Kubrick, second from the right, was preparing to shoot the famous space movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. Also visible in the photograph are Arthur C. Clarke, in the middle, a British science fiction writer, and Professor Teofilo Tabanera of the Argentine Space Concession following behind. Many find this photograph to further assert a studio-based moon landing. All original Apollo 11 slow-scan television tapes, which allegedly contained the raw footage and telemetry data of the 1969 moon landing, remain entirely lost to this day. Even more suspicious, NASA later erased and recorded over other key tapes that allegedly held the original high-quality video recordings of the moonwalk, citing a supposed shortage of magnetic tapes during the 1970s and 1980s. With its substantial resources and government backing, how could NASA face difficulties in procuring magnetic tapes to safeguard the epic footage of their first lunar voyage? The loss of such critical historical material is all the more perplexing. Surely public or private entities could have even donated magnetic tapes to preserve this historic achievement. Many publicly available photos, allegedly taken from the lunar surface, intentionally obscure the true source of light, rendering it completely blocked out from view. This consistent pattern, where a strong light source is present in almost all similar photographs, clearly obscures the true origin of the illumination, whether it is truly the sun or artificial stage lighting. This deliberate obfuscation fuels further speculation about the actual source of light in these photographs. We also find instances where an astronaut's suit is brightly lit, even though it is on the side opposite from the sun and completely shadowed by the lunar module. This discrepancy raises questions about how the rear side of the lunar lander and the astronaut can appear fully illuminated while also being fully engulfed in the lander's shadow, given that the sun is the only light source that should be on the moon. Another obvious example of the presence of multiple light sources in these photographs is evidenced by the extreme difference in shadow directions. The significantly divergent shadow directions cannot be simply attributed to an optical illusion of perspective, as many NASA supporters posit, especially to the degree of divergence we see. Another highly scrutinized aspect of the 1969 lunar module's descent onto the Moon's surface is the complete absence of a blast crater or any disturbance beneath its landing site. The thruster of the module was said to produce 10,000 pounds of thrust, while, again, no imprint, scorching, or any remnant whatsoever of this unimaginable heat and thrust was left under the lunar module, not even dust or debris on the landing pads. Further evidence that the 1972 moon landing was an elaborate hoax, as well as the 1969 moon landing, is found in an image that captures raindrops, each forming streaks of identical length due to the camera's shutter speed, perfectly aligned and descending at identical angles. This was NASA's very last photograph taken from the moon. Was the studio production rained out, so to speak? As many are aware, an endless multitude of collective evidence could be presented to challenge the authenticity of the moon landings, yet such an in-depth analysis lies beyond the scope of our overall goal. The moon landing controversy alone would span numerous volumes, given the extensive information available and all of the skeptical hindsight we have accumulated up to modern day. A leaked videotape from the Apollo 11 mission shows the 3 astronauts using the command module's circular window to fabricate false images of a spherical Earth. They also used a sheet of paper to create the illusion of a terminator line, which marks the division between night and day. By darkening the cabin lights, the exterior walls of the window mimicked the blackness of space, thus producing the illusion of a spherical Earth captured from a distance. The astronauts captured only a small portion of the Earth through the circular window, where clouds mingled with land, producing these misleading images. Recordings of their communications with Mission Control discuss, quote, refining the realism of images in post-production. Most important, the command module's circular window was deliberately used to crop more of the Earth's surface from view. These deceptively cropped images imply that more of the Earth was not captured outside of the circular window. Consider the implications here. We have been taught that Earth is spherical, but a complete, unobstructed image of Earth was never captured from the command module. Instead, what we see is only a partial view of Earth, framed by the command module's circular window, and artificially enhanced with a simulated terminator line to increase realism. Many public images that purport to show the Earth from the moon's surface have been exposed as fallacious composites created by superimposing falsely produced photographs of a spherical Earth onto separate photographs of a lunar surface. The credibility of NASA imagery is further called into question by an interview with NASA's senior program analyst who is responsible for creating Blue Marble 2.0. Robert Simon states that complete photographs of Earth do not exist. What we see are digitally crafted composites. He further adds, it is photoshopped, but it has to be. Images of Earth are constructed using datasets, multiple strips of satellite images pieced together to produce what appears to be a realistic depiction of Earth. This further solidifies doubts about the authenticity of photographic evidence from the Apollo 11 mission. How can we place any real trust in these images, or any others, when NASA's own senior program analyst admits that there are no complete photographs of the Earth? The Telegraph, on August 29, 2009, reported, curators at Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum, where the rock has attracted tens of thousands of visitors each year, discovered that the lunar rock, valued at 308,000 pounds, was in fact petrified wood. The rock was given to Willem Dries, a former Dutch leader, during a global tour by Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Edwin Buzz Aldrin, following their moon mission 50 years ago. NASA gave moon rocks to more than 100 countries following lunar missions in 1969 and the 1970s. The United States Embassy in The Hague is carrying out an investigation into the affair. Are you aware that every NASA rocket launch in history follows an arcing trajectory, curving back down toward the vast expanse of the ocean, rather than actually ascending into space. To date, no space agency has ever presented video evidence of a rocket ascending in a continued vertical trajectory beyond low Earth orbit and into deep space. This absence of footage is attributed to our new understanding that a direct upward course would expose the boundary of our contained world upon contact. This continued practice should now begin to reveal that NASA and other space agencies only create the appearance of rockets heading into space. In reality, their trajectories always curve downward soon after launch, eventually returning to Earth, consistently over the open ocean, as observed in every rocket launch in history. The only exception to this were the rockets involved in Operation Fishbowl, mentioned earlier, which were part of an effort to investigate the limits of the Earth's upper bounds through a series of detonations impacting against it. This consistent practice prevents extended observation of the rocket's true trajectory, leaving unresolved whether the rocket is actually heading into outer space or merely arcing toward a predetermined splashdown in the ocean, thereby perpetuating a deceptive portrayal of an authentic space launch. This notable omission is difficult to rationalize, especially considering that since 1969, not a single space agency has documented such an event. Video recordings of launches always terminate shortly after liftoff, just as the rocket begins its predictable downward trajectory toward the ocean. We might begin to realize that the only thing ever sent to space has been our imagination. Throughout the history of space exploration, the release of an uninterrupted video capturing a rocket's complete ascent into space could have decisively demonstrated that no physical barrier hinders access to space. Such evidence would have dispelled any notion that rockets are merely returning to restricted ocean areas as part of a deceptive act. This oversight is as hard to believe as an architect designing a skyscraper without including elevators, a fundamental element inexplicably absent from the records of space exploration and rocket launch history. The behavior of amateur rockets as they ascend to higher altitudes is both remarkable and significant to our discussion, particularly as they demonstrate clear interactions with this upper boundary in question. Unlike rockets launched by NASA and other space agencies, which always follow a deliberate arcing trajectory back toward the Earth, amateur rockets ascend directly upward. In 2014, Go Fast Sports launched a rocket that broke world records for altitude and speed. Intriguingly, the rocket abruptly halted at 73.1 miles in altitude, as if caught in quicksand, without any explosion or visible damage. This sudden stop clearly revealed an interaction with an unseen boundary. Surprisingly, the rocket was neither destroyed nor visibly damaged, and successfully reached an orbital phase. In 2017, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket grazed along a mysterious upper layer, creating an effect similar to gliding on a liquid surface, complete with visible ripples and waves. The following images document the event, displaying a trail that resembles rippling water streaming behind the rocket. This visual phenomenon manifests upon contact with the mysterious boundary, showing no prior signs of this effect before impact. NASA astronaut Don Pettit in 2016 stated, "I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is, we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again." How can we reasonably accept that more than 50 years after the last moon landings in 1972, the technology from a far less advanced era is now beyond recovery? Displayed here is a series of official NASA Earth images spanning from 1972 to 2015. These images display several noticeable inconsistencies, including variations in the sizes of continents. When viewed in color, at high resolution on NASA's website, they strikingly resemble cartoons. In countless video interviews, allegedly from the International Space Station, female astronauts are clearly seen to have their hair rigidly set, presumably by hairspray, as it springs back to its original position with each movement of their head. This lack of natural free-flowing movement stands in contrast to what one would anticipate in an authentic zero-gravity setting of space. Despite several rigorous head movements, the astronaut's hair snaps back to its original position from the start of the interview, as if it were on springs, instead of drifting freely as one would surely anticipate in the zero-gravity environment of space. Why would there be a need to orchestrate such an effect when untethered, free-floating hair would naturally occur in a low-gravity setting? If stray hair were a practical concern, simple solutions such as wearing a NASA-branded hat or tying the hair back in a bun or ponytail would suffice. Instead, NASA constructs the illusion of a weightless environment in a way that is so unconvincing even a child would question its authenticity. Numerous instances have been documented in publicly available videos where air bubbles emerge from astronauts' suits during alleged spacewalks on the ISS. Additionally, reflections in astronauts' visors reveal a scuba diver complete with an oxygen tank operating a video camera. On July 16, 2013, an astronaut's helmet filled up with water during an alleged spacewalk, involving Italian astronaut Luca Parmitano. This clearly reveals that spacewalks are not from space, but quite evidently from NASA's Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory in Houston, Texas. This massive underwater training facility, housing an ISS replica, is designed to simulate the zero-gravity environment of space. Many public NASA videos display unmistakable anomalies. The following appears to show a genuine video interview from the ISS. However, a subsequent extended video glitch clearly exposes the use of a separate video layer onto which the astronauts have been superimposed onto a separate ISS video layer background. Many public ISS video interviews clearly show outlines and impressions of harness wires on astronauts' clothing, particularly during stunts such as rolls or flips, clearly indicating their use for artificial support. In other videos, these harnesses are left visible, assuming a failure of video editing techniques intended to conceal them. While our low-resolution images may not clearly reveal these details, the abundance of online videos makes the deception unmistakably evident. On August 23, 2023, India supposedly landed on the moon. As expected, the public only sees the initial launch footage from this significant lunar mission. Live coverage was immediately discontinued moments thereafter. This again demonstrates that, to this day, there is no continuous video documentation available of any journey to the moon, even in our most modern technological era in history. Incredible video footage that would have captivated audiences worldwide remains mysteriously unreleased. Subsequently, the only photographic or video representations of the lunar lander and command module released later to the public, and not live, were poorly produced computer-generated images of merely cartoon quality at best. Accompanying these were low-resolution and dubious short video clips showing the module hovering over the moon, characterized by unsteady and very poor frame rates. The following official images are from the Chandrayaan-3 mission that purport to evidence this voyage to the moon that once again a child can quickly discern as entirely fallacious. Remarkable, given that this is all that is provided to us during an era of unparalleled technology. In January 2019 and June 2024, the Chinese Space Agency allegedly landed their probes on the moon. For both of these missions, the public was only shown the launch, with no subsequent video footage of the journey to the moon or images of the Earth during the ascent into space. Given China's status as a technology powerhouse, the absence of visual documentation and coverage from these missions is confounding. The only visuals provided were generic scenes from a mission control room filled with applause. All available images and videos, including those purporting to show the lunar lander on the moon, are of such poor computer-generated quality that even the least discerning eye can quickly recognize their inauthenticity. The few images provided that depict the moon's surface lack any semblance of authenticity, even at first glance. Can we finally confront the reality of our blind and trusting acquiescence to such deceitful fabrications? We have become too complacent, settling for the absolute minimum, a fleeting headline, the sight of a rocket climbing the sky, and a handful of dubious images alleged as evidence. This is an affront to the public's intelligence, and their entitlement as taxpayers to an acceptable level of proof of such alleged monumental space endeavors. Could our enchantment with the concept of outer space play a part, fueled by dreams of moon bases and interstellar tourism? Is it the allure of space exploration, amplified by the science fiction of Hollywood, that has us so blindly trusting to believe such sparse evidence without innate skepticism? The topic of extraterrestrial life and unidentified flying objects is so vast and multifaceted that it could be the focus of innumerable volumes. Public fascination with aliens and UFOs surged in the mid-20th century, notably with events such as the Roswell, New Mexico incident and the mysteries surrounding Area 51. This surge was rather timely, coinciding perfectly with the dawn of space exploration. This captivation has endured, continually fueled by a proliferation of space and alien-themed films, along with a continuing cultural preoccupation with UFOs and aliens. Is it possible that the concept of aliens and UFOs was entirely fabricated and propagated to lend further credibility to the existence of outer space? Should a boundary around our Earth be confirmed, as we intend to demonstrate, the entire notion of aliens and UFOs would immediately become purely fictional and obsolete. I believe that any legitimate reports of UFOs or mysterious aerial events which are not based on unsubstantiated claims or ambiguous videos are potentially orchestrated by space agencies like NASA. This is done to promote and reinforce the concept of infinite space, entirely contrary to our contained system, which was discovered. Given NASA's extensive budget, it is certainly possible that considerable resources could be allocated to deceptively stage and simulate encounters or incidents with aliens and UFOs, past, present, and in the future, as part of a broader agenda. Such an agenda could be crafted to effectively unify the world's population by staging a manufactured crisis, specifically a fake alien incident of sorts that necessitates worldwide unity. This would lay the necessary groundwork for creating a single worldwide government and possibly a universal currency, a planned agenda that many have warned of for decades. This could expand the role of an existing international organization such as the United Nations to become the world government, paving the way for a new world order. Historically implemented by rulers and governments for centuries, this is known as order out of chaos. It involves deliberately creating a crisis to force a pre-planned resolution when people are most desperate for it. This agenda might not be as hard to imagine, given that the Latin phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Ages, has long been inscribed on the US $1 bill, quite synonymous, to say the least. It is also noteworthy that the US $1 bill features pagan symbology, such as the all-seeing eye, alongside imagery reminiscent of a pyramid from ancient civilizations. What connection could possibly exist between the United States, ancient pagan cultures, and the all-seeing eye that continues to persist on the US $1 bill to this day? When will we acknowledge the growing evidence of a grand and carefully crafted deception? To what extent are we willing to ignore our intuition, logic, common sense, and reason merely to conform to popular consensus, go with the flow, or avoid confronting internal conflicts and thereby deny deeper truths? It should become clear that the concept of outer space has been entirely fabricated with a discernible motive.